Hello guys and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video we are going to be creating a finance thumbnail. So the style of thumbnail that we're creating today is one in which induces fear or makes you feel like you need to do a certain action quickly. These sort of thumbnails are very popular at the moment. You could call this a dramatic finance thumbnail. Ultimately, that's what it is. And we're going to create one today. I share a lot of my glowing techniques in this video, so I believe you guys will learn a lot in today's tutorial. With that being said, let's get straight into the video. Okay guys, so let's go to new file. And I'm just going to click my preset template. So I do recommend if you guys are making a lot of YouTube thumbnails that you just have a preset saved to the dimensions you see on screen. So 1920 by 1080p and keep all the other options the same and click create. Okay guys, so here I have an image of a subject which I found on FreePic, and I'll link this in the description down below for you guys, that I've simply just cut out using a layer mask. As you can see right here, I've just simply separated the background from the subject. So what I'm going to show you guys right now is how to restore an image, especially when you've resized it and it becomes a little bit pixelated. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to sharpen this image. So I'll just make a duplicate of this layer. So press Command or Control J in order to make a duplicate. I'm just going to name this backup. It's always good to have a backup, guys, and I'm just going to group that into this folder and hide it, something we keep to the side. Okay, so now with this layer, the main layer that we're focusing on right now, I am going to duplicate this layer, so Command or Control J, and then with this particular layer, I'm going to go to Filter, Other, and we are going to go to High Pass. Okay guys, so essentially what the high pass filter does is it picks up on the brightness values within the image. For example, if we zoom in right here, there are parts of the image which are darker and there are parts of the image which are lighter or brighter, right? So what the high pass filter will do is essentially identify the different brightness values and enhance the contrast. So once you have pressed OK, and I'm going to keep this at 7 pixels, you will then need to apply a blending mode. So we're going to go to soft light. So I always apply soft light to my images which I'm trying to sharpen via this method because it's not too harsh. If you go to vivid light or linear light, you can see that it's overly sharpened and it really doesn't give a realistic look. So let's just stay to soft light. And I also just decrease the opacity of this effect to about 70, just to give it that realistic look. And so as you can see guys, that's the before and that's the after. When you zoom in, you can really see the difference. So that's before, that's after. As you can see, it's much sharper than it previously was. What we can do now is we can merge the two layers. So I'm going to highlight both of the layers and press Command or Control E to merge both layers. And then we are just going to call this subject, like so. Okay, now I want to further enhance the contrast of this image. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the highlights and increase the shadows. So what we will do is we will create a curves adjustment layer. So go to Curves. And I am going to click on a point near the highlights area, which is on this section. So on this side of the graph, I'm just going to create a point and I'm going to drag it up like so. What that's going to do is it's going to increase the highlights. Okay, now I'm just going to duplicate this layer, so Command or Control J, and I'm going to do the inverse. So I'm actually going to decrease the shadows, or increase the shadows rather, by dragging this point down like so. So I don't want these effects to be visible at this point in time, so I'm just going to invert both of these layer masks, so Command or Control I to do that. And I want to now create a clipping mask, clipping both of these curves adjustment layers to the subject. So press between the two layers and then hold Alt or Option, and then just click like so. And do that for both layers. Okay, so I'm just going to rename both of these layers. So for the first one, we are going to name this highlights because we increased the highlights in this layer. And I'm going to do shadows for the other layer like so. Okay, so with the highlights layer mask selected, we are going to press on B for the brush tool, and we are going to paint in the highlights wherever there are highlights on the image. So we are going to have the flow set to 10% and make sure that the color is set to white so that the effect is visible on the image. Okay, so let's start drawing in. So as you can see, we're just painting over the highlighted areas on the image. Avoiding the darker areas, we will do that for the shadows. So let's just go over the highlights. So again, just low flow, 10%. And we're just going over the highlights on the image. You don't need to spend too much time on this, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, let's just go over the eyes a little bit, get some of the highlights on the ears, some of the thinker there, and that should be fine. Okay, so let's do the same thing for the shadows now. So what I like to do for the shadows is I like to keep the flow set to about 6% because it's a much stronger effect that is applied when you use 10% flow. So that, as you can see, is already darkening the image. Let's do this over the hair. I like it when it's applied against the hair. It's fine. Okay, let's get the eyebrows. And let's just sort of enhance this nose bridge and get some of the detail where we can. Put underneath the neck as well. You can see there's a dark spot here, dark spot over here, and just the edge of his hand, like so. That's looking pretty good to me. Now if we are to toggle between before and after of both the highlights and shadows, as you can see, we have enhanced the image. It's looking a lot more striking. Okay guys, so now I'm going to focus on creating a background. So I'm just going to click on the padlock in order to unlock the background layer. And then I'm going to double click on this layer and then click on color overlay. Now the desired color I have for the background is already selected, and I will give you the hex code for this particular color. Now I'm going to click OK. Now, one thing I want to do off the bat is I want to change the color of the t-shirt because it will not match with the theme I'm going for today. So let us quickly focus on changing the color of the t-shirt. So I'm just going to make sure that the subject layer is selected, and then I'm just going to pick the quick selection tool. I'm just going to zoom in and I'm just going to make a selection of the shirt. It's not going to be perfect, but we can always come back and refine it. So let's just try and get most of the shirt. Make a quick highlight. Something like this for now should be fine, and then we can just refine it afterwards. So let's go and click on adjustment layers and go to hue and saturation. Let's just zoom out a little bit, and then we can focus on changing the color of the shirt. Okay guys, so I've just changed the color of the shirt. Now I'm just going to go back in and refine the things which we have missed. So let's just have the white color selected, have the brush tool selected, set the flow to 100%, and then we are going to paint in where we missed out with the selection. I'm also going to set the hardness to 100% because we want this not to seep into the skin. So we are just going to create hard lines, like so. Pretty good. Let's just focus on that. And I'll speed this up guys because I don't want to bore you. Okay guys, so everything's starting to come together. Now I just want to increase the detail in the shirt, and so how I'm going to do that is I'm going to first right click and create a smart object. So convert to smart object, and then we're going to go into filter, camera raw filter. Okay, now ignore the color because we have added a hue and saturation layer, so that will not be visible. So let's go to detail. We're going to increase the sharpening to 20. We are going to go to effects and increase the texture and increase the clarity like so. And then we can click OK. Now as you can see, we've gained some detail back into the shirt, but we've also gained detail everywhere on the image. And so what we need to do is we need to click on this layer mask here, and then with the brush tool highlighted, we are going to have our color set to black, and then we are going to paint in with 100% flow and 100% opacity. We're just going to paint in over the skin to remove that from the image. Like so. So now we have the effect of the increased clarity and texture only applied to the shirt. Now make sure you do not forget about getting rid of the details on the hands and all over the subject, because otherwise it will look rough. So that looks just fine. Okay guys, so here I have an image of a $100 bills which I found on FreePic, and it's a really nice background image. So what I thought is I'd use it in this thumbnail. So I'm just going to drag this image into our canvas like so, and I'm just going to place this underneath the subject layer. Okay, and then we are just going to drag it to fit on screen. Okay, that's perfect. Now I'm also going to decrease the opacity of this to 35%. And so what we get by doing this is we get a combination of the base color of the background plus also having our image being visible. Okay guys, so I have an image here of fire, and this is now going to be part of the background elements which we are going to add. So I'm just going to drag this also into our document, and I'm just going to make sure that it's placed behind the subject like so. And then we are going to play with the blending modes in order to remove the black from the image. Something like this should be fine. And then we are going to put the blending mode to lighter color. Okay guys, so I'm going to add a layer mask to this fire layer, and I'm just going to get rid of any of these bits which don't look so good. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to have B for the brush tool, having the black color selected, and I'm just going to get rid of these parts like so. It's looking pretty good. Just get rid of anything which doesn't look too appealing to the eye. Right. Okay, maybe we can get rid of this as well. Yeah, that looks lovely. Okay guys, so now it's time to add in the glow effects. So what I'm going to do is have the subject layer selected, and I'm going to double click and then click on outer glow. Now I'm going to create a double outer glow effect, and I'll show you how that's done. So the first thing we need to do is have your outer glow selected. We are going to pick an orange hue, a hue which is sort of matching with the color of the fire. So let us go ahead and do that. So with the color picker tool, once we click on the color, we can actually use the color picker to make things easier for us, and we can sort of bring it and make it a little bit lighter. Something like this should be fine, and I'll leave the hex code down below for you guys. Something like this should be fine. Okay, and then we are going to just increase the size, increase the opacity, and we want this to be quite strong, so it's something that's very visible. So okay, so let's just take this to about, let's say even 90% opacity. Yep, and we are going to keep the size to about, let's say 81 pixels should do the trick. I might actually take the opacity to 100 and click OK. Okay guys, so the next step will be to right click on the outer glow effect and then create a layer. And what that's essentially going to do is it's going to take the effect layer and put it into its own layer. Okay, so with that being done, we're now going to double click on the subject layer again, and we are going to create another outer glow effect like so. And we want to keep the color relatively similar to what we used in the first glow. Okay, and so we are just going to adjust with the size settings. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Maybe work with spread. No, that doesn't look good. So let's just focus on this. Looks pretty good to me. Now, when you zoom in, you can see we now have a sort of nice effect where it's sort of stronger near the subject, and it sort of branches out into a more fainter version of the orange. So that looks good like that. But guys, we're not done yet. Of course I could make this glow better, and so I'm just going to show you how to do that right now. So let us go ahead now and change the blending modes of the first outer glow to linear dodge. So do that, and then we're going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to go back into the outer glow that we did for the second glow, and we are going to change the blending mode here to linear dodge as well, like so. And now we can adjust the opacity and strength to how we like. And now, as you can see guys, we are dealing with some serious glow effect. Okay guys, so now we're going to move on to the second phase of our sort of glowing. You could call this adding the soft light and adding rim lights to the subject, and that's just going to make it look even better than it is right now. Okay guys, so I'm now going to add a solid color adjustment layer. So we are going to click on adjustment layers and click on solid color. Okay, and we're just going to keep this color to this for now, and we'll change this in just a moment. Okay, now we want to make sure that we are clipping this to the subject, and then we just want to invert the mask by pressing Command or Control I. And we are going to make sure now that we have our brush tool selected. So have B for the brush tool, and you want to keep the flow to 60%. And you want to make sure that the opacity is set to 100, and you want to make sure that the brush is selected as the main color being white. Okay, now we are just going to paint in the rim lights or the soft light. Right, now don't worry how it looks right now, we will adjust that in just a moment. So just focus on doing this first, like so. Just gonna paint some light over the hair to make it look more realistic. And then we are going to change the blending mode of this to screen. So let's just do that right now. And as you can see, we've got more of a glowish effect. Now you can adjust the opacity if it's too strong, and you can also adjust the color. So you can at any point just change the color here, and this will adjust the color of the glow. So let's just keep working with this until we're happy with what we have. Okay. So something like this looks fine. And then again, you can just adjust the opacity until you are happy. Now, if you are not happy with whatever you've drawn in, you can always change the color of the layer mask to the main color being black, and then you can go back in and just remove what you're not happy with by painting it. So I'm just going to fine tune this, and I'll be right back with you guys in just a moment. Okay guys, so what I'm quickly going to do now is I'm going to create a new layer at the top, and I'm just going to, with the brush tool selected, so B for the brush tool, we are going to make sure that we have a soft brush to make sure that the hardness is set to 0. I'm just going to source any color from the fire, so I'm going to hold down Alt or Option, and then just pick a nice orange shade, something like this will do, and then just increase the brush size, and then just lightly tap over the fire, like so. And then we are going to change the blending mode to color dodge, and then we can just decrease the opacity to about 40%, like so. And so what that does is it just adds a glow to the fire and creates a level of realism. So as you can see, that's before and that's after. Okay guys, so now it's time to add in the text. So I'm going to press T for the type tool, and then I am just going to click and type cell, press escape and resize by pressing Command or Control T, and then holding down Shift and Option to keep it in the same position. And we are going to press enter, and then I'm going to drag whilst holding Option and Shift to create a duplicate, and then I am going to change this text to now. So cell now. Okay, so the font that I am using right now is Bebas New Regular. Okay guys, so now I'm just going to maneuver the text to get it how I like, and I'll be right back in just a moment. Okay guys, so I've just adjusted the text. So what I did was I increased the size of both the text layers, and I also put this now layer behind the subject. So as you can see, a bit of his hair strands are over the text. It looks pretty good, so I'm just sticking with it. Okay, and as you can see, there's a relatively even amount of negative space on both ends. So we are good to go. Okay guys, so now let's add a gradient to our text layer. So I'm going to click on cell, and I'm going to just double click and then create a gradient overlay. And I want to actually keep the gradient to a very subtle light gray to white gradient. So I'm just going to give you the hex code for the gray. So there is the hex code there, and I'll put it down below for you guys, and then click OK. Now I just want to do the exact same thing for now. So I'm just going to double click and then click on gradient overlay, like so. What we can do from here is we can add a drop shadow behind the text in order to make it stand out a bit more. So I'm going to go to our cell layer and then click on drop shadow, and we are just going to create a nice subtle drop shadow, and that's just going to emphasize the text and make it more visible on screen. Let's just pan out a little bit and so we can have a better view. Okay, and I'm just going to copy this. So I'm just going to right click and then click on copy layer style. And then I'm just going to scroll down to my other text layer, right click and then paste layer style. So now we have our drop shadow on both text layers. Okay guys, so before we move on to our final step, which will be the camera raw filter, I just want to quickly color grade our subject here in order to make him blend better within the background. So I'll show you how to do that. So what we are going to do is have our subject layer selected, and then I'm going to create a color balance layer. So we are going to go to color balance. Okay. Now what I will do is also I'm going to drag this to the top like so. And we are now going to adjust the tones here on both the midtones, shadows and highlights in order to create a more orange tint. So let's just toggle about with the settings here on midtones. So let's just add some red. And make sure you have a clipping mask on as well. Okay, we are just going to maybe increase the magenta and maybe have the yellows to -5. Let's go to the shadows and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to increase the reds to +8. Maybe keep the magenta to -2 and then keep the yellows to -8. Let's just do the same thing for the highlights. So we are going to go to the reds, just increase the reds ever so slightly. And again, with these things, you do not want to do too much. You just want it to be very subtle, but it makes a big difference. So let's just carry on. Let's just take away and move it more to the magenta side. And then maybe increase some yellows as well. Okay, so now the subject looks like he's actually within the image. As you can see, when I toggle between before and after, you can see that it sort of blends in much nicer than it did before. Okay guys, so now it's time for the final step, which is the camera raw filter. So let's just press Command, Option, Shift and E. And what that's going to do is that's going to merge all the layers into one layer. And then we are going to right click and convert to Smart Object. Then from there we will go to Camera Raw Filter. And from here, let's start focusing on adjusting these sliders in each section. So let's start off with light. So let's just toggle about. Let's maybe increase the exposure to +20. Increase the contrast to 15. Yeah, that's looking good. We can probably keep the highlights the same. We're going to keep the highlights the same. Shadows, we can open up a little bit to +10 or maybe +15. Yeah, we are going to keep the whites the same, and we are going to maybe bring the blacks down a little bit, like so. So to -25, and then we are going to go to color. Let's sort of see if we can create a nice orange tint. No, that's not really working well. Yeah, so something like this, maybe +10 on the tint. Let's increase the vibrance to +10. Saturation, we can do to +3. Okay, in effects, let's go ahead and increase the texture a little bit more to +10. Increase the clarity to +10. And then we want to add a vignette. So I'm just going to drag the slider to the left, like so. And by having a vignette, what you are doing is you are placing more focus within the central part of the thumbnail. So it just helps to bring focus to the subject, which is always a good thing. So let's keep this to maybe -25. That's looking good. Okay, and we are going to increase the grain to, let's say, 20. I want a lot of grain on this one. Looks really good. We are going to increase the sharpening to 30. Yeah, and I am going to focus now on getting rid of some of the noise. So we are going to go to noise reduction, and we are just going to bring the noise down like so. So if we bring the noise down by 45, that really makes a difference in the skin. And I'll just go back so you guys can actually see this for yourselves. As you can see, there's a lot of noise on the actual subject's face. So when we add some noise reduction, you can see how the skin becomes smoother, right? The noise effect is still applied via the grain, but as you can see on the skin, a lot of it is eliminated from the actual subject. Okay, so let's zoom out now. And we can go to calibration. So let's go to calibration, and we can just adjust the hue on red primary to see if there's any better color we can achieve. So maybe slightly more to the left. Yeah, -10, that's looking awesome. So I'm just going to toggle between before and after to see if that looks better or not. Yeah, that looks better to me. And now we are going to click OK. Okay guys, so here is the before and here is the after. And as you can see, it's a night and day difference. Okay guys, so there you have it, a dramatic, eye-catchy finance thumbnail. Now if you would like to see more tutorials like this, just remember that I'm posting videos every single week, new tutorials in depth just like this one. In the last few days I've gained a lot of subscribers, so I'm very appreciative to everyone that's supporting my work. My goal is to help you guys learn everything there is to know about thumbnail designs, and you'll be getting a lot more from me. So thank you very much for watching guys, and until next time, peace.